Hi there, I'm Rolling Cherry and I'm here to talk about Phantasy Star Online 2 New Genesis, or rather its closed beta. Talk about my first impressions of the game, which I gotta say were really good. I ended up liking the game a lot more than I expected to, and this is coming from someone who really liked Phantasy Star Online 2, right? I played a lot on the Japanese server mostly. I didn't play NA much. I don't really feel like it. Mostly because I didn't feel like starting over. But yeah, New Genesis. Right. Let's talk about that. It has quite a few interesting things going for it. The gameplay, I think, is overall an improvement. I like the fact that it's now open world, kind of. It's like a mix between open world and an instance world. Um, and basically that's because of the blocks system, right? Like you know how in Phantasy Star Online 2 you have the different blocks which are like different mini servers within one server or one ship? It's kind of like that, except each area has like its own blocks. And that's where my first um, I think the first flaw the game has comes into play, and that's basically it makes party play a bit harder, right? Because every block in every area can have up to 32 players in it, and let's assume that you enter a block, right? And you're player number 32 to enter the block, and then one of your party members wants to join, and now he can't, right? Like he'll be sent to a random block that has less than 32 players, and that's obviously a bad thing because again, it makes coordinating, playing with friends a lot harder than it should be. But I think it's gonna be fixed by the time the full game comes out. That is the first complaint I have about the game. Now I'm more of a solo player, so it doesn't really affect me that much. But considering it's an MMO, most people are probably gonna want to play with friends and whatnot, and that might make the party making a bit more tedious. And hopefully they fix it really quickly. Do I want to fight the Dawn Defender now? Okay, sorry. Now, yeah, something I gotta mention is that the reason I'm playing Hollow Knight is I didn't record footage of New Genesis because I didn't know if my PC could handle Streamlabs and you know PSO New Genesis. Apparently, it could have because in general I thought the game was really well optimized. I thought I'd have to play the game on medium, and I I mean not on medium, on the lowest settings. I actually got to play it on medium with little to no frame drops, and apparently a lot of people had frame drops, and apparently it's because the game isn't that well optimized yet. It's either that or the Microsoft application being kind of bad. I've had a lot of issues with the Microsoft application in the past, mostly when I'm installing games from the Game Pass and whatnot. So yeah, um, do I think the game has potential? Yes, I think it. I think it has potential to be the best MMORPG of the 2020s. And if that ends up happening, right, like it's easy to see why. Because the combat is really good. I think it's some of the most fluid combat I've seen on MMORPG. Um, Now something that might be an issue for some is that the combat, since it's more fluid, it also means that attacks are a lot less telegraphed, and that means they're harder to dodge for the most part until you get used to them. But once you actually get used to the timing of the attacks and whatnot, it's not too bad. The game isn't that hard, but it's still harder than the original game was. I think that's a good thing. Now, something else I should probably mention is that the four classes I tried all felt really good. Like, I tried the two slash classes and the two ranged classes. So that's Hunter, Fighter, Ranger, and Gunner. And they all felt really good to play. I liked all of them, honestly. And I think what was it? Fighter in particular feels like an improvement over its gameplay in Phantasy Star Online 2. So yeah, there are a lot of I don't think the game has many issues in terms of gameplay. Another one that I kind of forgot, but now I'm gonna mention is the ground pound. That's a thing in the game now. Basically, if you jump and attack somewhat quickly, you do a ground pound, right? And that makes it harder to actually fight airborne enemies. And there's an obvious issue with that because there are enemies, like not enemies, but areas that are filled with airborne enemies, and them being harder to fight because of a mechanic that isn't that well implemented is there's a bit of an obvious issue with that. So what else can I actually say about this? Well, I don't think I can really say much more about the gameplay. Like, I think the ground pound is a good addition because it's an AoE attack, and that can actually be helpful for crowd control reasons. Um, the thing is, will it actually be well implemented when the full game comes out? And I don't know. I don't know. The game isn't out yet. It's supposed to come out next month, and hopefully it does. And if it does, it's probably gonna be a really good game. Um, Now, graphically speaking, the game looks really good. I was actually impressed by how good it looked on medium settings. It's not the best looking game I've ever played, but it still looked really good. And in terms of music, the music is just it's good, right? If there is one thing I really like about the Phantasy Star games, especially the online games, is the music. I still think Phantasy Star Online 1 had the best music, but the music in New Genesis is good, right? It's not bad at all, and I think people are gonna enjoy it for the most part. Now, do I think the game has potential to be the WoW killer or the Final Fantasy 14 killer? I wouldn't say so. Here's the thing. Both games still are gonna have a lot of fans, right? And the issue with WoW is that I think the game is killing itself to some extent, right? Like, beyond Blizzard kind of messing up from time to time, people just change over time. They get bored of whatever they like at some point. People have more obligations nowadays. Like, if you play the game when you were, I don't know, 16, now you're like 24, you have a lot more obligations. You can really play WoW as much as you used to. Uh, so I think that's obviously gonna have an effect on whether people actually like people who play WoW move to PSO, for example. I mean, New Genesis. If it ends up being a more casual experience, and that's a possibility, right? Do I think it will happen? Not really. It has potential to do so, but at the same time, I don't really see it happening. Um, Other aspects that I think I should mention. Not really. I think whether it does well or not depends on how good the release is. As if it has a bad release like the original PSO2 had on in the West, because the global server had some issues on release, right? Files deleting themselves, files not downloading correctly, the Microsoft Store not being that good, and not particularly confusing, but just in general having a lot of issues. And I think all of that could have an impact on how well received the game is. And because I think a lot of people who aren't playing PSO2 now are not playing it because of how bad the release was. Which again wasn't terrible. Again, it's not the worst launch I've ever seen to any game. I've certainly seen much worse. Um, but at the same time, it's like that's a bad first impression. I think people who played Phantasy Star Online 2, who tried it out right a couple of years ago, actually last year, and were disappointed with it, being an instanced MMO instead of an open world thing. Uh, they probably won't give New Genesis a chance because they won't believe that the game is now open world or whatever. And again, I think they're gonna be. I think it's gonna be a bit of a niche title, and people are sadly gonna miss out on the game. But I also see it possibly becoming one of the most played MMORPGs of the year, if not the most played one. Um, I've seen some hype surrounding the game, so I think it has a lot of potential. I think it has potential to be like a really, really big deal everywhere. Something else I should mention is that apparently the mouse and keyboard controls aren't that good, and I haven't really played much. I haven't really played around much with that because I've always played Phantasy Star Online with a controller. But if that's the case, like I personally didn't really have much issue with it. Um, but I can see some people who have no controllers or whatever actually having some issues with the fact that mouse and keyboard controls aren't that good when playing PSO2. Well, New Genesis, I guess. I should always add New Genesis whenever I'm talking about this. All things considered, yeah, I really hope the game does well. I really hope people end up liking this. I really hope the game is successful enough to bring a single player Phantasy Star revival. Because I would love to see that. I would love to see Sega bring back Phantasy Star as a single player series as well. I mean, if Final Fantasy could get Final Fantasy 15 and 7 remake after the success of 14, I don't see why Sega can't do the same for Phantasy Star. So yeah, I guess that's it. Do I think the game is gonna be good? Yes. Like, going by the closed beta alone, the game has a lot of potential. The game is probably gonna be great. And I hope that's the case. I hope the game ends up being one of the most played MMORPGs of the year. And I hope the game ends up being the biggest um, game of the decade. If it's not, I'm totally okay with it too. But I think it actually has potential to be that good. And hopefully it is. And hopefully a lot of people enjoy it as much as I enjoy the closed beta. Um, I don't think there's anything else I should mention about the game. It looks good, it plays well, the combat is good. Uh, it's it sounds good. That's another thing that I should mention. As I said, the sound effects and the music are both really good, are really well designed. Hopefully, in terms of mechanics, we get to explore different planets. That would be really good. Some like Motavia from Phantasy Star 4. Um, in that desert state it is. Anything else I would like to add? I don't think so, honestly. I know this is like a very low quality video, but yeah, that's pretty much what I can say about the game for now. Will I play it when it gets released? I'm not sure yet. I kind of want to, but at the same time I want to focus on single player games for now. Um, I will at least give it a second chance. Like, not, you know what I mean, right? I like to see how the game changes from its closed beta status to its live status. So yeah, I'd say that's it for today, and thank you for watching this. I know again it's a really low quality video, and you know what? It could be so much worse. So yeah, thanks for tuning in. Have a nice rest of your day. I'll see if I can think up anything else I want to say about the game, and maybe do a follow-up video if that's the case. So yeah, see you next time. Bye bye.